Greetings, everyone. My name's Dale Parrish. Welcome to COS Indiana Live. I'm the virtual program coordinator, and my co-host this evening is Ken Kashuba. Ken is our state communications coordinator. Well, Ken, I messed up that intro, didn't I?
Your things were a little behind, I guess.
Yeah, I pushed the wrong button, so we got
That's
through it anyway.
yeah.
It's the way it goes. Okay. Uh, Ken will be monitoring our comments and questions from our viewers this evening. So if you are viewing, feel free to use the chat feature and submit a question or comment about our topic this evening. And Ken will be monitoring those and let us know if we've got one that we need to address. Now, Ken, this is broadcast number 236, and this is your 100th broadcast
Number
that you
100.
have been on with.
Happy fireworks
So
to
you
go on. Yep.
you finally got to the 100 point. That's right.
Made the 100 mark. Yep. There we go.
Yep. And I just want to say thank you for being on there with me for the past 100, and I hope we have another 100 to rack up here. So
It's been
thank
my
you very
pleasure.
much
Yep.
for everything you've done.
Uh-huh.
Ken, why don't you take a little time here and explain the QR code up there and what that can do for those that want to become subscribers?
Okay. Yeah. That QR code right there happens to be our QR code that will get you subscribed to Convention of States COS Indiana Live. We have a complete platform which you'll be subscribed to, which will put you in touch with other members, other subscribers of COSL of COSIL, and we have a number of features that we have there, such as events, upcoming programming notes, video downloads, all kinds of information and things that you can utilize as a subscriber. And the QR code using your smartphone will get you right to that. The ability to go ahead and put that subscribe that way. And I did have somebody a couple weeks ago that mentioned they couldn't get the QR code, whether it was an issue with their phone or whatever. So I'm also going to post a link in the chat room. So the link will go up, and if you need to use that link to sign in, you can also get to the subscriber list that way. So hoping to increase our viewership and give our viewers basically a nice little package of things that they can use.
All right. Good deal. Thanks, Ken.
Yep.
Well, Ken, I want to do something here that I've just started doing, and that is I want to bring on the debt clock. And those of you viewing, if you don't see this on a routine basis, I encourage you to Google or to call up the usdebtclock.org. And this is this is one of the pillars of our resolution for Convention of States, and that's to address the national debt by proposing amendments that would do that through holding of a Convention of States. And I just think this is, in my personal opinion, this is the top priority in this country, or certainly one of the top priorities. But you can see up here in the upper left-hand corner, as you can see here, there's a wealth of information on this chart, and the numbers are changing constantly. And up here in the upper left-hand corner, where my cursor is, our national debt is over $34.5 trillion. And one evening, I just sat here and timed it, and it only took 25 seconds to rack up another $1 million. So we're going to be talking about that a little bit later on in the broadcast this evening. We have a series that's being presented by one of our volunteers, Gary Harbaugh. It's called Our Debt Avalanche, and we're going to be presenting another episode of that series this evening, a little later on in the broadcast. So I hate to bring that up, but that is a priority in this. I believe in this country, and I think we need to be addressing this on a routine basis. So on Convention of States Indiana Live, we're gonna talk about it every week, and because I think it's that important. Well, Ken, let's get going with our show this evening, our broadcast. We got a lot of good stuff for you tonight, folks. We've got Cathie Humbarger coming up here, and I think you're going to find Cathie is very, very interesting with regard to the abortion issue, as well as her current job with Safe Haven Baby Boxes. We got another episode of the Debt Avalanche that I just mentioned to you. And we have with us, we haven't had this young lady in some time. Miss Debbie Stewart is going to come on. Debbie is our constitutional expert and is going to talk to us about the 25th Amendment. That's kind of been in the news a little bit, Ken, hasn't it? This 25th Amendment.
Yeah, 25th Amendment without talking about our current administration, can you?
Yeah. So I think it ought to be. I know Debbie will make it interesting this evening. So, Ken, let's bring on our first guest here, Cathie Humbarger. And hello, Cathie.
Hello, Dale and Ken. Thank you so much for having me this evening.
Well, it's our pleasure, Billy. Very, very much our pleasure. And Cathie, I wanted to show your name up here, Cathie Humbarger, Babies and Mothers, and I know you will. I'm sure people will understand more as we go along here, but this is kind of what your life is about, right? Babies and mothers. So
absolutely, it's been about babies and mothers my whole adult life, both personally and in my career.
I know. Okay, well, let's briefly, let's just talk about the positions that you've had in this area. I first met you. I don't know if you remember this or not, but I met you outside a polling station. I guess it was the 2016, perhaps, election. I can't remember which one it was, but you were executive director of Right to Life of Northeast Indiana.
Yes.
And you were in that organization over 20 years, am I correct?
Actually 20 years, yes, from January of 2002 until January of 2022. So that makes 20 years. And prior to that, I think I failed to mention this to you previously, I was on the founding board of the first Pregnancy Resource Center here in Fort Wayne.
Okay. All right. So yeah.
So I'm even older than that.
Then you were founder and CEO of Reprotection.
Right.
Okay.
Reprotection is an organization that grew out of our success here in Indiana in enforcing regulations and laws that are already on the books to close down nefarious abortionists. So we were able to close down 3 abortion facilities here in Indiana, and that got the attention of some folks at the national level. And they asked me how we did it. And I said, I didn't think much about it. We just took the next step and the next step. So as a result of that, we were able to capture a strategy and then start this new organization, Reprotection. So that was a very blessed time, I will say it that way, to be able to take everything that we had learned here in Indiana to the national level and pass that on. After I was CEO and we got the organization running, then I stepped back and the next generation took over. So I'm so pleased about that.
All right. Well, what, you got something, Ken?
No, we're good. I was just amazed that she spent 20 years and was able to not only get that up nationally, but then to be able to pass that along to another generation. That's great work. Great work, Kat.
Yep.
Well, I think those of us who've been at this a while have a responsibility to prepare those coming behind us, to put as much of the knowledge and the experiences that we've had into their minds and into their brains, as Rush used to say, their skulls full of mush,
Yeah.
and then be willing to let go. That can be hard for those of us that have been around for a while to let go.
Yep.
So, yeah, that was a real privilege. And every time I get the opportunity to take a young person into the State House and have them go with me and meet legislators and sit in hearings, I'm just blessed to know that this is going to go on. This fight is going to go on.
I wholeheartedly believe that there comes a time when you need to let go. I believe that very much, no matter what position you're in or organization you're in.
Right.
So currently, as if 20 years wasn't enough and more, currently you're the director of public policy with Safe Haven Baby Boxes now. And
yes. At one point, I had 3 jobs. I was executive director of Right to Life of Northeast Indiana. I was CEO of Reprotection, and also had the opportunity then to come on board with Safe Haven Baby Boxes.
Oh.
My lane there is to write legislation for states that want to join the effort and make newborn safety devices legal in their state.
Okay.
So,
we're going to get into that more a little bit
okay.
later, but okay.
Absolutely.
So I didn't know you were doing all 3 of these jobs at one time for
not, I think it was about a year, and that was about all that
I could imagine
I could do, but there were good people that were with me. I wasn't doing all of those things by myself.
Yeah. Well, our viewers may recall a few weeks ago, we did a whole program on the Safe Haven Baby Box organization with Monica Kelsey and the chiefs from the Carmel Firehouse.
Oh yes, they're wonderful people.
Ken went down and did a great video interview with those 2 gentlemen, and you can tell they are really excited about the program and very much.
Absolutely.
Yes. So that's what you're currently doing, and we'll get into those here. We'll get into that in a bit. But first, Cathie, give me just a little thumbnail of your background. Where were you born and raised? That type of thing.
I was born in Columbus, Indiana, which is about 45 minutes south of Indianapolis. It's about halfway between Louisville and Indianapolis.
Right.
I was the youngest of 4 children. I grew up in attending a Lutheran parochial grade school and public high school, which wasn't then what it is now. And then when my husband and I got married, we moved to Fort Wayne, because that's where he was from. And that was in 1976. So I've been here ever since. My husband and I had a small business, which I was privileged to be a part of, doing the administrative work. And then when we moved away from that, I had the opportunity to work on staff with a church. And then from there, I went to what was then Allen County Right to Life, which is a public policy organization. And then from there, I worked for a time also with Indiana Right to Life, primarily on policy and lobbying and spending time in the State House, helping draft pro-life legislation and assisting legislators in understanding what we were trying to do and supporting and encouraging them. And then at the same time, we were closing down the abortion facilities here in Indiana, and that led to Reprotection. And then when I left there, I was already working with Safe Haven Baby Boxes with Monica Kelsey, who I understand was a guest of yours.
Mm-hmm.
I worked with her on the very first legislation that passed here in Indiana to make Safe Haven Baby Boxes legal. And I just helped her with my understanding of the State House and the legislators and how to draft legislation. So that kind of grew and grew. And finally, a couple of years ago, she was calling me about this state and that state. And I said, Monica, why don't you just hire me? So she did. And I've been just blessed to be a part of this great team. The program is just exploding. We anticipate that anywhere from 7 to 10 states are going to come on this legislative session, and that will add to the 15 states we're already in. So one of these days, I'm going to work myself out of a job when we have all 50 states, which is our ultimate goal, of course.
Okay, don't get too far ahead now. We're going to get more into that as we go along.
Well, I should add that I am the mother of 3 and the grandmother of 13 with us, and 1 that has gone before us and is waiting for us in heaven, and 2 great grandchildren. So babies everywhere have been my focus.
I was going to say, this kind of leads me. I've said this already. Your life has been babies and mothers. What was there a particular incident or something that triggered this interest in babies and mothers?
Well, yes. A dear friend of mine that worked for my husband and me when we had our business was with lunch. We were having lunch one day. She was sitting across the table, and she said, "Will you still be my friend if I tell you that I've had an abortion?" Well, this was in the early 1980s, and I knew that abortion was legal and it was going on, but I didn't think naively that anybody I knew had made an abortion decision. But of course, I immediately said, "Yes, of course, I'll be your friend, but tell me how this happened." So this was before pregnancy resource centers, and it was before the post-abortion ministries that are so prevalent now. And she allowed me to walk through her abortion experience, and the Lord just grabbed my heart through the broken heart of a woman who had believed the lie that for a price an abortionist could erase the life of her baby. And that is never true. So she found healing and forgiveness at the foot of the cross, which is where we all find forgiveness for what we've done wrong. That isn't the unforgivable sin. But through all that, I really understood the mindset or what may be going on in a woman's mind, because oftentimes we can't understand how she could make this decision. But she let me into that process with her, and it was just an amazing thing. And that was the foundation. I remember praying to the Lord, I will do anything that you want me to do for this cause, except walk down the street carrying a sign. The next year, my husband and I were chairman of the March for Life here in Fort Wayne, and I was walking down the street carrying a sign. So never tell God what you won't do.
That's funny. That's good. That's good. That's good. Well, we know, I know that you played a role definitely in the abortion issue here in Indiana, right?
Mm-hmm.
And you were very, very well. I don't know how extensive you were instrumental in the legislation that passed here in Indiana, but I know you had an influence on it. I know you had some input to it. But tell us, what is the law now in Indiana with regard to abortion?
Well, Indiana has a ban on abortion with exceptions. And to my knowledge, we're the only state that has been able to accomplish that at this point. The exceptions are the hard cases, which I'm sure most of us have heard: rape, incest, life of the mother. And then the other one is lethal fetal anomaly. And that's when the mother gets an adverse prenatal diagnosis about the baby. It could have a disability of some sort, lack of development. There's a whole list of things that can be a problem. So the legislators, the pro-life legislators, did the absolute best that they could, but their votes weren't there to have a total ban with no exceptions.
How Cathie, if I could ask, how this lethal fetal anomaly,
Mm-hmm.
does it require multiple diagnoses or just one diagnosis from a doctor, or
In order to make the abortion legal?
yes?
Yeah, just one.
Just one. Just
Yes.
one. Okay.
To my knowledge, it's been a while since I've looked at the fine print of the law, but I think a
Okay.
doctor that is licensed in the state of Indiana can make that determination, and then it's up to the mother, obviously, to decide if she wants to take the route of having an abortion or allow the baby to continue growing, go through delivery, and let the Lord take the baby according to his timetable and not ours. Interestingly enough, I've had several conversations with women who are experts on this specific situation, and they tell me that there are studies that show that women in that situation have better outcomes long term if they decide to have the baby and love it as long as they can, as opposed to those who believe the lie that this is going to be the best for the baby, it will eliminate suffering and all of that. Um, I can't imagine anything that would be more harsh. Most of these abortions are done later in the pregnancy, and at that point, the primary way that abortions are done are dismemberment, which actually the abortionist rips off the arms and legs and crushes the skull of the baby. I know that's hard to hear, but I can't imagine anything that would be any more painful and gruesome than that to the unborn baby. But
Okay.
there are those out there that advocate for that, and some mothers do choose that. Of course, we love them no matter what.
Well, one more question on abortion, and then we're
Sure.
gonna leave that issue. But I had asked you the other night. I told you I saw a report, heard a report that said that since the Dobbs decision, that which returned the issue to the states, that the number of abortions has actually increased over
Mhm.
last year, and is that true? What do you know about
Uh,
that?
Yes, a couple of points to make on that. First is that California is not required to report. None of the states are required to report to um, the Department of Health, that keeps the national statistics. They're not required unless their state requires them to. So, but California was not a reporting state before the Dobbs decision, and they're not now. So that's a bit of a wash. But any numbers that we look at are likely to be way higher than that because of California not being included. So here was the situation. The Dobbs decision came down in early summer, I think June of 2022. So the Indiana legislature met in special session and passed the ban that same summer. However, a lot of states were not back in session until 2023. And that's when they passed the legislation that they were going to pass if they were in states that were going to restrict. Because just a reminder to us all, Dobbs decision did not make abortion illegal in the United States by any stretch of the imagination. It left it up to the states to decide.
Right.
Well, there are some states that want to be the abortion mecca of the world, so they have pretty much let go of any kind of restrictions. And so the states that wanted to pass tighter restrictions, and some of the states that already had legislation banning abortions on the books before the original Supreme Court decision, or who had legislation that said if the Supreme Court returns this to the states, in our state it's illegal immediately. So you had all those states in play. Typically, the ones that expanded the availability of abortion in their state, that's what they're operating under. But the states that passed more restrictions or had a pre-Supreme Court decision law that they just hadn't been enforcing, or that had a legislation that said if the Supreme Court returns it to the states, it's illegal here. All of that happened pretty much obviously in the fall and, well, in the legislative session the next year. So
Okay.
that would have been 2023. And a lot of those pieces of legislation were challenged in court. Well, they're still tied up there. So those regulations haven't gone into effect. And then you have other states like Ohio and Kentucky and Michigan that have taken whatever their limitations were that were in place and would have been enforceable. They've taken those to court. And now they have expanded and Illinois too, they've expanded their availability of abortion. So I don't think it's been long enough post Dobbs decision to really see where this is going to shake out, because the states that have more restrictions, a lot of those are tied up in court still. And the ones that made less restrictions in their state are in effect. So that could very well explain the difference. So we probably are going to need a little bit of time to let the dust settle and see where these court cases come out. Additionally, we need to make the case to people across this country so that they will understand that regardless of whether abortion is legal or not, it's unthinkable. And that's a task that I think we can accomplish. But it's just like, take smoking, for instance. Back in the day, everybody smoked and it was perfectly normal. But then as time went on and we found out more about smoking and there was more information, the minds of people shifted. So even though smoking is still legal, the numbers are way down because the people have been educated to understand. And that's exactly the strategy we have to have here. We have to make this unthinkable to people, or help them understand that it's unthinkable.
All right. Well, I agree with you.
I'm sorry if I gave you a drink of water from a fire hose, but
we've used that term many times ourselves. Anyway, let's move on to safe haven baby boxes, and that's enough on the abortion. And let's move on. And now well, I'm going to jump to this next banner. It was interesting in preparing for this interview with you that I learned this from you, that in order for you to put a box in a fire station in a state, that there's got to be legislation in place for this, right?
Yes.
And that's where you come into play.
Right.
I mean, do most states have some sort of legislation in place, or what are you finding?
Well, all 50 states have safe haven legislation already in their code, but that requires a face-to-face surrender. So if a desperate mother feels that she's just overwhelmed and she cannot take care of this child, she can go to a designated, and it's different state to state. Some of them say hospitals only. Some of them say fire stations. I've even seen some that say churches, but it was all face to face. Well, that's just a bridge too far for some mothers, because maybe they have children that are already involved with DCS. Maybe they're drug addicted. Maybe they have an outstanding warrant for their arrest. We're limited only by our imaginations as to what can be the pressure that's on the woman. And oftentimes in the moment of crisis, she may be tempted and may act on putting the baby in a dumpster, putting the baby on the side of the road, putting the baby in a trash can in the restroom at a restaurant. I mean, babies have been found everywhere. Some of them alive and some of them unfortunately deceased. So for a mother who is in so much stress that she feels she must do something, we make this option available. And it's the generic term for it is newborn safety device, because that is exactly what it is. So in order to make it available in states that have the safe haven law that requires face-to-face surrenders, we need to go to the legislatures and ask them to expand their law to include this form of relinquishment. So the reason it's so important is because without this, the mother is liable or is exposed to being charged for child abandonment. So we draft legislation that says that the mother cannot be charged with child abandonment for leaving her baby in the safe haven
I
baby
think
box.
that's very important to stress.
Yes,
That's the other part of your babies and mothers
absolutely.
concept. Yeah, so safe haven baby boxes. You're saying you are as much concerned about the mother as the baby. Am I correct in saying
Oh,
that?
absolutely. And our founder and CEO, Monica Kelsey, is very, very sensitive to the mothers. I'm sure that many have watched press conferences that happen after a baby has been relinquished. The main reason that we do that, obviously, we want to let people know, and that raises awareness of not only the newborn safety devices, but the safe haven law, whether it be face to face or not. But these mothers oftentimes watch because they want to know that their baby is okay. So Monica speaks directly to the mother in those press conferences and assures her that she did the right thing. There's no shame, no blame, no name, and that her baby is okay and will be taken care of. So we also have a hotline that is staffed by a licensed therapist, and she takes all the calls. So if she has an opportunity to help the mom make a different decision, for example, make an adoption plan or work through whatever crisis so that she can parent herself, if we have that much time, that is what the woman is encouraged to do. The last resort, well, not the last resort, the last resort is a dumpster, but the last healthy and safe resort is to put the baby in a newborn safety device. She has gotten calls from mothers who have maybe delivered their baby 15 minutes ago. And of course, that's not the time to start talking about making an adoption plan. So we had a student call us, and our hotline worker walked through the situation. The girl was on her way to school. She'd had the baby that morning. She was on her way to school, and we were able to direct her to a newborn safety device. She put the baby in the newborn safety device and went to school. So it is
Wow.
unbelievable, some of these
Wow.
situations. And oftentimes, the mothers call after they've relinquished the baby. And then we have staff that are skilled and licensed to do the counseling with her and help her work through this situation.
All right. I want to show this. I don't want to run out of time here. This is a
Oh, absolutely.
picture.
I'm sorry. They called me Chatty Cathie in grade school for a reason.
No problem. You're doing fine. But we wanted to show, get that off of there. We wanted to show a picture of you said this was the first baby, right?
The very first baby that was relinquished in Cool Springs Fire Station here in Northwest Indiana. They've
Okay.
had 2 surrenders, but as you can see, this little baby, they just opened the newborn safety device and are ready to take her out. So whatever you say about this project, and believe it or not, there are some detractors, but when you look in the faces of these little babies, I don't understand what argument there could be in not wanting to make this available when it's necessary.
Yeah. Was this a newborn, Cathie, or was this
Yes. Yep.
it was?
Yep.
Yeah.
Newborn.
Wow.
And oftentimes they are, more often than not. Sometimes they still have the placenta attached. The student that I mentioned a minute ago had actually tied the cord off. And so our phone person said, well, how did you know how to do that? She said, I Googled it.
Googled it. All
So,
right.
you know, we live in a different world. I think when
Yeah.
safe haven laws were passed 20 years ago, there may have been more of an acceptance to walk into a fire station or a hospital or a police station and hand the baby over face to face. But
Yeah.
with the technology and the prevalence of all kinds of outside pressures,
Now,
sometimes this is the only option that these mothers have.
okay, now, and this baby has since been adopted and
Yes,
is in
it's
a
with
loving
its
family.
forever family. Yes.
Okay, wonderful, wonderful. Uh, one more point on the legislation. I think you had mentioned to me that many times the existing legislation is just not sufficient enough. So you have to address the administrative, what you call the administrative rules, right?
Right, right. And we've learned a lot over the time, over the years that we've been drafting legislation. Um, we had a situation come up in Ohio. I'll start there, um, where safe haven or newborn safety device language was passed, and then as part of the legislation, the legislators had put in that the Ohio Department of Health would write administrative rules. Well, in the original legislation, it said that the fire station had to be staffed 24/7. Well, when the legislation got to the health department, they decided that what they wanted to put in is that it had to be staffed in person. They put those two words there, in person. And for whatever reason, a resident of Ohio was motivated. He had an axe to grind, I think, with the township where he lived. And so he looked into this and saw that it said in person. What we didn't understand when we started this is that in the firefighter world, if they get a call out to a fire, everybody goes. It's all hands on deck. But they don't consider that not being staffed. So we had to go back because we could get nowhere with the health department or the governor or anybody else. We had to go back the next legislative session and have them include the language that basically said fire station staff 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, except when all staff are called out on a fire emergency when the nearest medical responder, first responder, will be dispatched to the station to retrieve the child. Well, we actually had this happen, and the baby was still retrieved in under 5 minutes. But we had to go through all that and actually ended up closing a couple boxes in Ohio because of this technicality.
Wow.
So that was so frustrating. Now, as I've learned, and so now as I help legislators draft legislation, I know to put that clumsy language in there from the very beginning.
Yeah.
Legislators, I think anything that has to do with health or children or whatever, they have been, it's been a practice to have an administrative department, be it Department of Health, Department of Child Services, whatever, draft administrative rules. And so we're way better off, even if we have a health department that really wants to cooperate. It's a system and it takes forever to get that done. So we advise legislators to not put in there that the administrative rules have to be written. We put enough in the legislation that is going to make these boxes safe. And then the rest of those details are handled in the contract between the fire station and us at the supplier. For example, in Maine, they passed newborn safety device legislation. We didn't even know it, and we found out that they passed it. Well, they had included the part about having the Maine Health Department write administrative rules. So this passed through the legislature, both chambers. The governor did not like the legislation. Surprise, surprise. The Maine governor was way more liberal than I think she could bend her mind around trying to save babies that are already here. But anyway, she decided to allow the legislation to become law without her signature. So, however, the legislation still said that the health department had to write rules. So the health department reports to the governor. So no surprise, the health department just didn't write the rules. So the next session, the folks in Maine that were advocating for this contacted me and they said, can you draft legislation that will eliminate the need for administrative code? I said, sure. So I did, and it was sailing right through until it got to a committee. And I'm telling you, I would not have believed this if I hadn't been watching it live stream. One of the committee members, a legislator, this was after the Dobbs decision, and some may remember that the justices mentioned safe haven laws in their determinations. So this guy, who is a raging, rabid abortion supporter, said, well, there is no way I can support this legislation because Justice Barrett said in her written judgment, she advocated for safe haven the safe haven laws. So he said, this organization makes women have babies, and therefore I can't support it.
Oh my!
I mean, it makes no sense. No sense.
Okay, we got to wrap it up here, Cathie.
Oh, I'm sorry.
That's okay. I want to have you come back if you would, please.
I'd love to.
Maybe we can get Monica and Cathie on at the same time. That would be.
Well, yeah, we're both talkers, so you'll have to figure. We'll have to raise our hand or something.
I want to let you. I want to wind up our interview this evening on something you said, that all this work that you're doing, the results we'll see in heaven. Am I right?
Exactly. There are some organizations that are pro-life or whatever their cause is, and they can show you the results. For example, a pregnancy resource center can say, here's the baby that we saved last year because we're here. But with public policy, not so much. So we know that babies have been saved, and we are thrilled about that. And we will not know which babies were saved and which lives we were able to touch until we get to heaven. But God knows.
All right. Cathie, thank you so much for coming on tonight. It's been very
privilege.
And,
my privilege.
Like
thank
I said,
you so much.
I think we'll have you back for sure. Okay.
God bless.
Thank you. Thank you.
Yep.
All right, Ken. Ken, we're not going to do the debt avalanche tonight. We went long with Cathie, so.
Okay. Amazing work. Amazing.
Yep. Yep. We're going to jump right into Debbie here, and let's talk about the 25th Amendment. Debbie, I got you muted there. I'm going to you want to unmute yourself there?
All right. Hi.
There you go. Well, what an act to follow there, Debbie.
Man, I tell you, that was amazing. Amazing.
Very interesting. I tell you.
Wow.
Well,
one end of the spectrum to the other, right, Debbie?
Say that again.
Said from one end of the spectrum to the other is where we're at.
Right, exactly.
Yes. Mm-hmm. Well, Debbie, tell us what you know about the 25th Amendment.
Yeah, so the current 25th Amendment that we have has 4 sections, and we're going to get into those in just a second. But I kind of want to define, what did the founders have? Because the 25th Amendment wasn't until 1967. So up until then, if something happened to the president, there was very little out there to tell the political group what to do. And so I want to just read what we had. And this is in Article 2, Section 1, Clause 6. Okay? So this is what the original founders wrote. In case of the removal of the president from office, or of his death, resignation, or inability to discharge the powers and duties of the said office, the same shall devolve on the vice president and Congress by law, and Congress may by law provide for the case of removal, death, resignation, or inability, both of the president and vice president, declaring what officers shall then act as president. So they didn't really say. and such officers shall act accordingly until the disability be removed or a president shall be elected. So it was really like, they weren't real specific. And I think one of the first instances is when William Henry Harrison, who I believe was our 9th president, died a month into office. And so everybody was like, what do we do? Well, John Tyler was the VP, and he just jumped right in there, and he kind of took the bull by the horns. And then they had to decide, well, what duties should he do and what should he do? Is he the acting president? And so this kind of went on for a while. And then what happened, and just to give you like a little history here, is that when John F. Kennedy got assassinated, then they realized that, wow, we needed something so that we know what the succession is. So this whole amendment is who succeeds the president, how does it happen, when does it happen, what kind of process do we need to verify that it's being done correctly. And so so they came up with the 25th Amendment, which provides the succession rules, and it was ratified by Congress in 1967. So John F. Kennedy was assassinated in November of 63. This was ratified by the 38th state in February of 1967.
So
Okay,
so
that,
the 25th had to do with who succeeds, the succession
right,
of
go ahead.
Maybe I'm just jumping the gun.
No, they didn't know what to do if something happened to the president or the vice president. And so they needed something very, very specific so people knew what to do. And so they came up with this 4 sections of the 25th Amendment. So there's 4 sections in there. Let me just really quick kind of tell you, I'm not going to read them to you.
Okay.
But the first section is basically if the president is unable, the vice president becomes the president. And that's happened once in history. And that's when President Nixon resigned. And he then took Gerald Ford, who was the vice president, and he took over.
Right.
So, okay,
Right.
so that was the one time. Now, back up a little bit. The second section says, well, if a vacancy in the office of the vice president happens, the president actually gets to nominate who they want. And it doesn't have to be somebody in the line of succession. Then we'll talk about an act that was done, the Presidential Succession Act, here in just a minute. Okay, so now that's happened twice because when Nixon, Spiro Agnew was his VP and he resigned. So what he did then is he appointed Gerald Ford.
Right.
But then when Nixon resigned, then Gerald Ford moved right into presidency. So he's the only one that was never elected as a VP or a president. Okay, so that happened twice. And then now Gerald Ford appointed Rockefeller as his VP. That was the second time that Section 2 was used. Okay, Section 3 is basically when the president knows, hey, I'm going to be out for a bit. I need to have somebody come in and act in my place. And that's 3 times with a colonoscopy for Bush, a colonoscopy for Biden, and a colonoscopy for President Reagan. So all 3 of those, and they're the vice presidents for acting presidents for about 2 hours while they underwent surgery. I think Kamala Harris was the first woman ever to act as president, 85 minutes. So that gives you
85 minutes. Okay.
Okay, so then, but the 4th one, and here's where there's a lot that's very long, is when the vice president and either a majority of the cabinet office leaders or Congress look at the president and say, hey, they're unfit. Okay, there's something wrong. And so they go to the president pro tempore, which is basically in the Senate, there's a person that is designated to fill in for the vice president because the vice president is the president of the Senate. So it's not Chuck Schumer, it's somebody else that's designated. So they go to the president pro tempore and the Speaker of the House, and it's called a transmitted declaration that says the president is unable to do their duties.
How many? What's the requirement? How many people have to do this?
It's not how many. Okay, so on this one, the vice president and either a majority of the cabinet leaders,
Okay,
or the vice president and Congress. enough of Congress at least have to get the idea going. They still are going to vote on this in both houses, and we'll get to that in a second.
Oh, I see.
Doesn't
Okay.
say how many, yeah. So, and then the vice president would immediately assume the presidential powers if this happens. But the president can go back and say, hey, I'm fine. I don't know what you all are talking about. I'm offended. And so if he disagrees, then now the majority of the executive officers or Congress disagree, then Congress takes a 2/3 vote out of both houses to say whether he's still unfit or not. And if it doesn't pass, then he or she gets to resume the presidency. So there's a ton of that. That section is about a page long because it has to be, they have to wait like 4 days for this and 21 days for this. And I won't bore you with all those exact details. Okay. So, and that's never been used. The fourth section has never been used, but it almost was with Reagan twice. When he was assassinated, they almost wanted to bring a call. They had already written it up, but they never did it because the doctor said, hey, he's going to make it. And then a second time, interestingly, some of the cabinet members of Reagan, this was 6 years later, said, hey, he looks inattentive and lazy and distracted, and he can't do his job. But then other people came and said that's crazy, and so they dropped that one too.
Really?
So I don't know if that was an attempt to get him out of there. Who knows, right?
I didn't know that. Okay.
Yep.
Interesting.
So yeah, so those are the 6 times that we've used the 25th Amendment. Okay. So now remember, we also said that in Article 2, Section 1, Clause 6, there was something originally in there, but then this was written in 1967. Now, there's something called the Presidential Succession Act, and this was way back with our founding fathers because they knew that, hey, we don't have a lot of language around that. So they wrote an act in 1792, then a Presidential Succession Act of 1886, and then another one in 1947, which was just revised in 2006. Okay, so we got 3 renditions, and the last one was revised. This is a federal statute, and it's established the presidential line of succession. Okay? It says Congress may by law provide for the case of removal. That's the second. I already read that to you. All right. Here's this line of succession. It's been changed several times, and the order of some have changed, but right now it's the president, right? Something happens, then it's the vice president, then it's the Speaker of the House, and it's the president pro tempore from the Senate. But then if for some reason all 4 of those guys or gals are taken out, then it becomes the part of the cabinet members, the executive leadership cabinet members. And then they even put which ones go first. So then it would be the Secretary of State, the Secretary of the Treasury, then the Secretary of War, then the Attorney General, Postmaster General, Secretary of the Navy, and lastly, the ones they've listed is the Secretary of Interior.
Wow.
Now, those ones, though, they have to be made eligible. So that means they can't just go in there like the other ones could, the President pro tempore, the Speaker, the VP. They have to be appointed by and with advice and consent of the Senate. So that's a good check and balance there.
Yeah. Wow.
You know?
All right.
That's how that would work. So now let's go to current issues. All right. So now, how much time do we have? A couple minutes here?
You got a couple minutes.
Okay. So you've heard people talking about, well, what if they deem President Joe Biden as ineligible, or, they thought he wasn't able to do the job. That would be Section 4, right?
Right.
And they would come up and say that, and then Kamala would become the vice president if it went through and it was passed by both houses. And then she would get to appoint her own vice president. That's what you've heard the talk about, right?
Right.
Okay, but here's something else I just learned. So when the Republican National Convention, this isn't conspiracy, I promise. So the Republican National Convention, I know you guys always tease me about stuff like the World Health Organization, but so when the Republican National Convention meets in the summer, you remember how they, like Trump is getting all these votes from the primaries, right? And so those delegates at the convention are bound to those results.
Right.
Okay. So they are bound to the candidate that has been picked. But when the Democratic National Convention meets in August, they have a rule that their delegates are not bound to the candidate. So basically, at the convention, they can decide to nominate somebody totally from left field, and they don't have to be in politics. So they could literally just nominate somebody different, the delegates could. And you would have somebody else that would now be the nominee for August, September, October, and then on the ballot in November.
Uh-huh.
Okay. So that's just something that they wouldn't even have to use the 25th Amendment. So that, to me, I thought was very interesting. So the question is, will those delegates remain loyal to Biden up into the convention and through the convention? Or will something happen where, they deem that President Biden is not eligible or something's wrong? I don't know. Any thoughts or questions on that?
Thoughts are that it seems like they write the rules to leave them an out. No matter what the situation is, they always have an out.
Yeah.
I don't know. I guess why is there not something that designates an overruling for both parties? What allows one party to just write their own rules and go their own way? I don't get that.
Yeah, so it's called inter-party or intra-party nomination, where they make their own rules for their conventions and everything. And so they always have an out. You're right. And it's very interesting, because it's like the kid who wants to change the rules in the middle of the game, but anticipates that. So changes them right before you start or something.
Right. All right. Well, you're going to leave us hanging because we're out of time. We got to move on. Once again, very interesting, Debbie. I'll tell you.
Well, time will tell, right?
Yes, time will tell.
It's really a matter of prayer that things are done right, justly and righteously with these conventions, and that, the delegates would honor, Biden has gotten the votes, that they would honor that. But we'll wait and see, won't we?
Yep, we will wait and see.
Yep.
Debbie, thank you very much. Thank you. We're going to look forward to seeing you maybe in April or so.
Absolutely.
I know you're watching the World Health Organization very closely, aren't you?
They are. They have been working for about 2 years now and coming up with new amendments for the entire world to follow. And most countries are siding in with that. And May is the big deadline where they intend to publish those and make all the countries obey them.
Oh, boy. Oh, great.
Yep.
All right. Stay tuned.
All
right, Debbie. Thank you very much. Thank you.
All right. Bye. Thank you.
Oh, boy. She always makes it interesting, doesn't she?
Yeah. Oh, left us on the edge of a cliff here, Dale.
Yeah. I wish we had. We went kind of long with Cathie and had to squeeze her in there. So anyway, well, let's close it out here, Ken. I wanted to let everybody know that the next broadcast is our roundtable, which is coming up on the 25th of March. And this is what we do on the fourth Monday of every month. And our topic is going to be the good, the bad, and the ugly of artificial intelligence. I tell you, John Ackerman, the host, he loves this, the good, the bad, and the ugly. I think everything's going to be preceded with the good, the bad, and the ugly from now on.
That's true. Yeah.
That's going to be the topic. And then coming up on the next COS Indiana live broadcast, regular broadcast, is going to be April 1st, April Fool's Day. And we're going to talk about election 2024. With a couple people here in Indiana that have some knowledge and expertise in this area. And this ought to be very, very interesting. I certainly do think so. So election 2024 coming up April 1st. All right. Well, Ken, that is a wrap for tonight. and we will. Did we get any comments or questions tonight, or anything that?
Not tonight. I think everybody was pretty much just glued to the screen, and I guess maybe as astonished as we all were.
Yep. Okay. All right. Well, listen, we will then Ken and I will sign off here, and we will wrap up our broadcast as we normally do with a Mark Meckler video, and that will be a wrap for tonight. And we will see everyone. Tune in next Monday evening for our roundtable talking about artificial intelligence. So, Ken, have a good evening, bud.
You too, Dale. Good to see you.
Good to. Let's see if I can get to where I need to be here.
I struggle to empathize with people who would give up. It doesn't make sense to me. Sam Adams said, for those of you who prefer safety and security over liberty, over the animating fight for liberty, I hope that you enjoy licking the hands that feed you. May your chains rest lightly upon you, and may posterity forget that you are our countrymen. Like, do you understand that your kids and you are sentencing your kids and your grandkids and your friends' kids and your neighbors' kids to a lifetime of slavery and servitude, literally, of fear, of living in the darkness? But never, ever, never, never, never give up. George Washington lost the majority of his battles that he fought in the American Revolution. If you read his writings, if you read the letters where he was writing to Congress asking for money and troops, he was saying, we're losing. I don't have the troops I need. I don't have the supplies I need. Did he quit? What about the guys on the beach at Normandy? Like, what did they do? Did they just quit? Oh, there's, a lot of guys are dying around me. It's really bad. It looks really dismal. Those cliffs are huge. Machine gun fire raining down on us. And it's too hard. We should just quit. Thank God those people didn't quit. If they had, where would we be? I get discouraged for sure. And I will quit fighting at some point. And that point is when the first shovel of dirt hits the top of my box 6 feet down.